everyone. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about spiritual connection as it pertains to courtship, dating, whatever you want to call it. The process that you go through with the opposite sex before you decide to get married. So people often assume, spiritual connection in a courtship or dating, whatever relationship, is extremely important. And it is, because if you're not connecting on a spiritual level, then what does that kind of say about potentially when you marry that person, how your spiritual connection will be then? It can say a lot. However, I think something that we do, especially as Christians, is that we place so much focus on the spiritual connection that we may go too far. You're probably like, go too far? What? How could I go too far when I am pursuing this person? How could I go too far? You're telling me I can read my Bible too much with my boyfriend or girlfriend? You're telling me I can pray too much with my boyfriend or girlfriend? You're telling me I can go to church too much with my boyfriend and girlfriend? You're telling me I can have too much Bible study with my boyfriend and girlfriend? Yes, I am. Now, before you judge, hear me out and listen to why I think that is. Okay, this is the way I look at it. We place a lot of value on a spiritual connection, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we also like to take away from the physical connection because we don't want to focus on the physical aspect before we get married, because that can be very dangerous. We can pretty much agree on that. And then you have the emotional connection that takes place. And you still have to be a little cautious with that too, because you don't want to get connected too soon to a person and you have all these emotional ties. So, I know we talk about ties a lot. You don't really hear it in the Bible, but it does talk about, how you shouldn't be unequally yoked with the person. So yoking is a form of tying. So in this sense, we'll call it three things. You have your emotional tie, your spiritual tie, and then your physical tie. So if you take out the physical tie, because you're not having sex before you get married, that's done. I mean, you may hold hands or whatever you choose to do or kiss. That's a little part of it, but the tie doesn't really happen until you actually have sex. Then you have the emotional tie, where you get your emotions and feelings involved, and it gets deeper and deeper. You connect on an emotional level. That isn't always bad, but you don't want to get too deep into the emotional connection until you are actually committed into marriage. Then the spiritual tie is there too. And a lot of people don't really look at them, reading their Bible or having quiet time or praying together. They don't look at that as developing a spiritual tie, when in fact it does. And the reason that I say this is that people don't realize that, and I've been there too, that when you are courting or dating somebody, whatever you want to call it, and you're doing all of these things together, you have to be careful, because there is a certain level of spiritual connection that you should not cross. When you get married, you're supposed to have a special spiritual connection with your husband or wife. That is the way it should be. Just as though you want to save sex for marriage, you want to save, certain little intimate details or emotions, you want to save that for marriage too. So why not save some sort of spiritual tie and connection for marriage as well? In fact, we should. Because if I'm going around dating different people and trying to, figure out, maybe I was in a failed relationship before, or a couple, and I connected so deeply on a spiritual level with them, that's harming me, because I've given something to them. Just as you think about your physical or your emotional tie, I've given a very big part of myself. In fact, it's just as significant as a emotional or physical tie, because that is something that you cannot take it back. Yes, you can break it, but it's going to take a lot, because connecting with somebody on a spiritual level is very, very powerful. It is extremely powerful. When you think about your physical ties, that has to do with your body. And then when your emotional tie comes in, that has to do with your soul. But the spiritual tie, of course, has to do with your spirit. And your spirit is something that is, directly linked with God and all that. So having a spiritual connection with somebody is fine, but I believe that we also need to have boundaries in our relationships as it pertains to a spiritual connection. So what does that look like? What does that mean? That means, for me personally, yes, we're dating or we're courting, and I don't mind visiting your church. You can come visit my church. But I am not going to all of a sudden start attending your church just because we're dating. No. I believe that that should not take place until you actually get married, and then wherever your husband feels like, you need to worship together, then you respect his decision as the leader of your household and you do that. But I feel like sometimes we allow our significant others to play such a big role in our spiritual lives that we forget about our own personal spiritual lives. For instance, when you get married, you become one. The Bible speaks about that. The two should join together and become one flesh, and they do. And that's correct. However, we forget that while you're praying with the person, while you're having Bible study together, while you're going to church together, worshiping together, all this awesome stuff, at the end of the day, when you go to heaven, it's just you and God. God doesn't judge you and your spouse together. He's looking at your relationship, you and him. Our relationships have to take place with Jesus. So this is like, all right, let's look at your relationship. You and Sam. Oh, y'all always prayed together. Y'all were awesome. We were like this. No, it's you and God. Like, he's like, yeah, you did all that. But what about me and you? You failed to acknowledge our personal relationship. I mean, that was cool and everything. You grew, but you missed out on a lot because you failed to acknowledge the relationship between you and I. You let that go all of a sudden when so-and-so came along. And we really need to remember that our personal relationship with God is just as important as we may look at our relationship and spirituality with our significant other. Mindful of the things that you're allowing yourself to do and partake in any relationship, honestly. It's good. It really is good to pray together. It's good to read your Bible together. But make sure that you are doing that by yourself, if not more. Because what happens, when you get married and your husband or wife, whoever, they might not have as much time as they did before. So now you're setting up these unrealistic goals and expectations in the dating process or the courting process, thinking, oh, we're going to always be able to do this. We're going to always be able to pray every Thursday and Friday and Saturday morning. We're going to always be able to read our Bibles at this particular time. It's not going to always be that way. So be very careful about how much you open yourself up to somebody spiritually, because that is nothing to play with. And I know that I've done that before. I've had a very close spiritual connection with somebody in a relationship, and it was great. But at the same time, when things got really busy between us and that wasn't able to happen as much, it did something to me. And I realized later that that's where the problem lied. There were no boundaries set even in that aspect of our relationship, and there should have been. And it's not to say that it's a bad thing. Some people honestly are completely ignorant to this fact. I was for the longest, and now I finally realized that me guarding my heart as it pertains to an emotional tie and a physical tie, it is just important for me to do that spiritually. I need to protect my spirit. Not saying that people are out to hurt your spirit, or even if this is going to be my husband or wife, oh, no, we can't pray together, we can't read our Bible. No, you absolutely do that. Just be careful about how much time you put into that with that person. Be careful that you're not putting in more time than you would one-on-one with God, or that you're not kind of making it seem like you're already married when you're not. Save something for your marriage. I know people always say, don't give boyfriends husband benefits, or don't give girlfriends wife benefits. Like, you shouldn't. So as much as we're saving ourselves for marriage, or saving yourself for certain emotional connections, save some things for a spiritual connection as well. If you get married, you need to. It's very important. It's just as important. And I've realized that, because then you get married and you can go to a whole nother level. God will take you to another level you never thought you could get to. And it'll be so much more special because you haven't gone to that level with anybody else. You haven't experienced that level with any other person because you've guarded your spirit in that area. Not saying, like I said, don't be closed off, but be careful, and the other person, if they are the person that God has destined you to be with, then they will feel the same way. They will understand, and they won't try to push you into such a strong spiritual connection before you get married. So be mindful of that if you're in a relationship, and if you're looking to get into one, hopefully it's God led. But honestly, like, that's the way that I'm beginning to look at it, that our spiritual connections in courtships are extremely important, and we have to be careful that we don't go too deep with the person. Some things need to be saved for marriage. They're way better in marriage, and God has it that way for a reason. So it's not to harm you. You can reach a certain level of spirituality, but I believe that when you get married, you're definitely going to go to another level. It's going to be absolutely amazing. But save it for marriage. Do not try to get so spiritually connected with your boo thing, and then you get married and things just kind of unravel, and you're like, oh man, what's going on? Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. I really hope that this video has kind of opened your eyes a little bit more to the different connections and ties that we can have within relationships. And if you have any questions, I always say feel free to email me at collegegirlsafterchrist@gmail.com. I love you guys so much, and I really am looking forward to everything that God is doing. I always say that, and it's true. Every single day, I'm looking forward to everything that God is doing in my life and in your life. So stay encouraged, be strong. God has so much in store for you. Do not be focused on a relationship, or focus just on God right now. Focus on Him and your connection with Him. That is the most important one of all. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know what you think, and feel free to give me more ideas.